This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on key decisions and highlights of the third Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. The participants are Ashok Sajanhar, former diplomat, and Ishan Mittal, anchor.
Recently, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity met for the third time in the US. Key negotiations related to clean economy and fair economy were concluded during the meeting on November 14, attended by Union Minister Piyush Goyal. Launched in 2022, IPEF has 14 partner countries. Ashokji, we wanted to ask you that IPEF is based on 4 pillars and was started by the US in 2022. Could you give us some background on this grouping, on why there was a need for starting this?
Basically, I think if you look at the changing global economic architecture, then I think it becomes quite clear that the center of gravity that earlier used to exist, let us say after the Second World War, for 50 years after that at least, the center of gravity has been based in the transatlantic region. That is the United States, that has been the most significant, that has been the largest economy. Even now, of course, it continues to be the largest economy in nominal dollar terms. It accounts for about 25-26% of the global economy. And also the countries in Europe, whether it is the United Kingdom or France or Germany, and of course, if we include Japan also, all these countries account for a very significant component of the global GDP. So it was the transatlantic partnership really that used to contribute the most significant quantum of the global GDP. Now, the center of gravity of the global GDP has been shifting from the transatlantic region to the Indo-Pacific region. So when President Joe Biden was here in Asia in May of last year for the Quad Summit in Tokyo, then it was this IPEF for Economic Prosperity was launched, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. And as you mentioned very correctly, 14 countries signed on to the IPEF. I will mention the names in alphabetical order, starting with Australia, Brunei, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Malaysia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and the United States of America. So these 14 countries signed on to the IPEF. And basically the idea was that these countries should come together and they should agree to certain rules on different pillars, according to which the trade and economic activities, economic cooperation and collaboration will be conducted so that the world can work together, cooperate together and prosper together. I think one of the other reasons also was that there was China-led economic organization, economic free trade agreement that had been put in position, and with 15 countries as members, China along with the 10 members of the ASEAN, that is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So 10 countries along with China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. So these 15 countries came together and they formed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. There was a very steep, deep reduction, progressive reduction as far as tariffs on the basis of trade between all these countries is conducted. That was done. And so it was thought that there should be another body, since this is an instrument that is used like the Belt and Road Initiative. This is used by China to increase its economic influence, its political influence, its strategic influence in the region. So there should be another body that should be set up. And in that context, it was the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework that was established. The last point that I would like to make in this introductory remark is that this is not a free trade area. IPEF is not a free trade area. It doesn't deal with exchanging tariff reductions or bringing down tariff between the countries. What it really does is in terms of establishing the rules on the basis of which trade and economic activity between the different countries is concerned, that could be conducted. And there are 4 pillars according to which discussions take place, negotiations take place, and certain set of rules is established on the basis of which these countries will be able to take forward bilateral and trade relations and economic relations bilaterally as well as amongst these 14 countries. So I think in that context, this is an extremely useful and important institution.
For our listeners, the IPEF comprises 40% of global GDP and nearly 28% of global production. So, against the backdrop of these numbers, what do the different tracks signify? And why has India decided to maintain an observer status on the Track 1 initiative, which is related to supply chains?
The first pillar is related actually to trade. And we have decided to get and have an observer status on Pillar 1. And we are full participants and full members in the other pillars related to supply chain, that is Pillar 2, clean economy, that is Pillar 3, and fair economy, that is Pillar 4. And of course, at this moment, we also have signed a very important agreement on the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, which has sought to establish a ministerial level council and also a commission. So the question that you asked, and it's a very important question as to why has India decided to be an observer. In fact, India is the only country which has taken this decision because there are issues related to workers' rights and worker freedoms. And sometimes we have found that these aspects are used by the developed countries to put in place penal tariffs or higher tariffs on goods that are imported from some of the countries. And that is why India wanted first to participate in the deliberation as an observer. And then, depending upon how the negotiations go ahead, then we take a decision on what is the sort of association that we would like to have with this particular group. And I think this is a unique feature of IPEF, that countries can associate themselves either with all the groups or a few of the groups and see how the discussions are going, and in future decide to enhance the level of their engagement with these particular groups. So that is why India is participating as an observer in the Pillar 1, but as a full member on Pillar 2, 3 and 4. And in fact, in the ministerial discussions that have taken place, we have had very significant and substantial decisions that have been taken and agreements that have been signed, both on the discussions under Pillar 2, which is on supply chains, as well as on Pillar 3 on the clean economy, dealing with climate change, and Pillar 4 on the fair economy. And the last point that I had made, that is a decision being taken to establish a ministerial level council and a commission. It's been decided that the ministers will meet every year so as to take the work forward, see how the implementation of the decisions that have been taken, that is being done, and also at the highest level, at the head of state and government level, the meetings will take place every 2 years so that the leadership is provided to the decisions, to whatever negotiations have been conducted and agreements that have been signed, first to ensure that they are implemented, and secondly to give a strong forward push to the discussions and deliberations that are being conducted on all these issues.
Union Minister Piyush Goyal asked to prioritize the implementation of cooperative work programs under Clean Economy Pillar, including hydrogen supply and biofuels and e-waste recycling. What's their significance under this pillar and the significance of India's proposed initiatives, if you could elaborate?
I think that's a very important aspect that Minister Piyush Goyal took up in this, because basically as far as all these aspects, whether it is climate change, India has taken a large number of initiatives over the last few years. Listeners would recall that earlier India was always looked upon as problem country which was always on the defensive, which was not willing to take any of any responsibility and take up any of the commitments as far as climate change issues are concerned. But over the last 8-9 years, India has been taking a leadership role as far as climate change issues are concerned, whether it was in 2015 during the COP21 in the Paris Accord. India had launched, along with the French presidency at that time, and also in presence of the US president at that time, the International Solar Alliance. And that has progressed very well. Today, we have more than 100 countries which are members of the International Solar Alliance. After that, recently, on the sidelines of the G20 summit, India, along with a number of other countries, including the United States, including the European Union, as well as Saudi Arabia and some of the other major countries, like Brazil, we have launched the Biofuels Alliance. And that is also will go in a very big way to strengthen the decisions for a clean economy. Also, some years ago in 2019, we had launched the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So I think India has been taking very strong steps, and what Shri Piyush Goyal mentioned at this meeting also is taking our leadership forward. We have said, we have committed that we are going to reach the net zero carbon by 2070, which is something very, very remarkable, very, very unusual. In fact, India today is the only G20 country which has been able to meet its commitments under the Paris Accord. So what India has been doing, and the commitments that we have given, that we are going to generate 500 gigawatts of energy through renewable means by 2030, and also provide 40% of electricity through renewable means again by 2030. I think these are very significant initiatives. These are very significant and ambitious targets that India has identified. And they go along with what Minister Shri Piyush Goyal, he mentioned. And it will also help to establish India's leadership as well as credibility as far as the very important and critical area of climate change is concerned.
Clean economy to fair economy. The Union Minister also highlighted how there is a need for enhancing information sharing among partners and facilitating asset recovery, strengthening cross-border probes and prosecutions. What aspect this relate to, and if you could talk about the importance of these suggestions under fair economy?
No, absolutely. I think this is very critical, and this falls squarely under the fourth pillar of a fair economy. That means that there should be no corruption that should come into global trade and economic activities. So whether it is in terms of promoting transparency or having greater interaction and providing more openness as far as global economy is concerned, that is very, very important. The countries decided that they will implement effective anti-corruption and tax measures, and these will boost commerce, trade and investment amongst the PF economies. So I think all these are very important elements that were discussed, and the contribution of Sri Goyal, of course, was extremely important, significant and relevant. There is also in terms of facilitation of asset recovery, because it has been our own experience that there are businessmen who are at times fly-by-night operators.
Thank you so much for your discussion with us on the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity.
It's a great pleasure to be with you.
You are listening to a discussion on key decisions and highlights of the third Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Ishan Mittal, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsttalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.